Also, just really think about this. Again, I aged out of a program. Now, that woman that had, you know, been watching me, she's the one who made me get active. She's the one who pushed the school on me. She made the group home possible for me. It was the only way for me to be eligible for a group home, for me to have a job, or for me to be in school. That is why I became in college. When people said, oh, like, you're doing the classic IEE certificate stuff, I had no interest in doing it at all. I was just sitting everywhere, dumping online, crying, trying to attract love to myself in destructive ways. And, that woman pushed it on me, and she got me moving, I wasn't doing anything with my life at all. She, pushed my regional center worker to look for something for me. She pushed me for DOR. She made the group home possible for me. Losing her in my life was really hard. She was not a therapist, but she was a mental health worker. And she ran groups. She took me to wellness centers. She did a lot. They had me under a mental health plan. So I aged out of that program. And, I texted her the other day, for the first time in a long time. Um, Let me see if, you know, I wanted to see her, this woman really had a really good impact on my life. It's been hard not having her in my life. I've adjusted, I didn't see her too often, but she definitely was responsible for me, for getting me out of really destructive cycles from my childhood trauma and abuse. Um, and how I moved out of my parents' abusive home. I was stable for 8 months when I had no contact with my parents. I was never engaging this oversharing behavior. Out of a low line of two, a desperation to attract love, I've had some really destructive behaviors, and I don't like them, but it's just my stress response. And, it is the four core frustration ego trap of, me not wanting therapy. You know, I feel like a seven can also have it. A seven maybe more than a four, because seven is afraid of pain. Now, I'm not afraid of experiencing pain. What I'm afraid of with therapy is losing my childhood and making me feel worthless and unlovable, and like making me feel more grief and envy that I never got to experience compassion and love from a parental figure. It's very hard for me, and combined with my past trauma with therapy, it's very hard for me. If I had primal therapy, which I've wanted since I've only been 17, I would readily go. I had thought about play therapy before. Um, Maybe. But most kinds of therapy, they're just gonna rob me of my childhood, make me move on to adulthood, not care about me. I want my needs met that I never had met. It's not fair to me to have them deprived. I don't deserve that. And people call it entitlement, like North Star, but I was never loved by anybody. Not my mom, not my dad, not my sister. The closest person was my grandma, and I watched her die in front of me when I was 15. You know, I suck up older men, people in my older men. I was talking to them as teenagers, desperate for that paternal love, father issues. Desperate to fill the void, to have parental care. You know, this was my primary chosen family father figure. His name is Vladimir. I had other ones, you know, Chris, Matthias. Rose might know a little bit of that background. But I sought out older men as a teenager to fill out the void that I had from my own absent love. Desperate to be loved and cared for, I wanted primal therapy. You know, I was talking to people who were diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, even who were parental towards me, you know, and one was a malignant narcissist diagnosed with ASPD comorbid, and he would get a rise out of seeing me self-harm. I would self-harm on camera for him, you know, desperate for that love. You know, that's a low side of too. And he really enjoyed seeing that in me. And I did not feel abused by him, you know.